Hey, I'm gonna say good evening, but it's actually, according to everyone else, it's like morning. So it's 12:48 a.m. It is, um, see, it is February 6th. It is Tuesday. So I wanted to come on here and make a video. My time is completely turned around. I went to bed probably around 7, which is really early, okay? It's like it's even early for like what they consider to be old women, like past 70 years old, okay? Like that's really early to go to bed, but I was very tired. My sleep pattern has been really choppy in the last few days. I get up early sometimes, and sometimes, it's like, or I'll go to bed really late, and then I'll get up early, and, it just throws things off. So, I'm doing things, the best way I can. So I'm going to be up for a few more hours before I get like tired enough to go back to sleep. But when I woke up, I thought it was like late, later than what it was. I thought it was like almost time for my son to get up in the morning because it was dark and he usually gets up in the dark. And when I looked at the clock, I'm like, wow. Anyway, so back here, when I woke up, of course, I had thoughts in my mind. I think, obviously, when you're dealing with a lot of stress and you're trying to figure things out and, get your life straightened out, and like I said, a lot of it's beyond my control. But I was thinking about, what led up to me being put in this situation. I wanted to kind of go back to some of the memories that I've had. Like when I was back in 2013, when I left the farmer's place, I know that, it was like really heavy on the street. Like it was, people were like, treating me like I did something wrong. I felt like people were like, it was like really, the targeting was just like really obvious. And I know that there was some blow up over at the Murray Family Farms place, mainly relating to my hair because I would change my hairstyle a lot. I did alternate, when I first started working at Murray Family Farms, I was wearing braids in my hair. I got hired wearing braids, which is funny because usually looking back, I can see how this job was arranged, okay, because braids were something that were not really considered welcome in the workplace for many, many years, okay. Mainly because, I think being a black woman, a woman of color, in the country, people have always had like a kind of an aversion to afros. I know in early America, we were kind of taught to straighten our hair. So during the summertime, especially back then, 2000, I started working there in 2009. So I left the place in Chatsworth that was horrible. Like I had dealt with a mobbing experience there. And so during that summer, it was a really cool summer. I cannot tell you what a cool summer it was because, like, I did go off on disability because of the mobbing issue, but I did have a lot of free time, and it was really cool because my son's friends would come over, and I would like do baking for them and stuff. I really felt like things were kind of normal. Like I felt like I was kind of getting back time that I didn't get to have when my son was younger. So I was feeling really happy and homely and enjoying that time. And then I would also go to the park and I was drawing, doing art, and I was kind of throwing myself into whatever. This was like the summer of 2009 after leaving Chatsworth. And then I was wearing braids and I got this, call from an email from like the Murray Family Farms to go take a test, and I took it. And I was told that I was the only one who passed the test. So to me, that was the qualification to get into the job. So I took the job. I know that things got really explosive. Anytime I would do something with my hair, I was dealing with, I guess, the main perp who arranged that job may have been one of the perps of my father or whatever. I don't know exactly who arranged that particular job, but there was always issues over that, that thing. And some people think that, black women change their hair or are fixated with our hair because maybe they were thinking, well, she just wants to look beautiful or whatever. I do like to look nice in my clothes. I'm not like necessarily trying to aim for like beauty, but I do try to look presentable. I like being presentable. I was always raised to believe that, there's a certain form of work attire. Like I mentioned, slacks. Okay, like I like slacks. I like vest. And those are kind of old and outdated, but those are some of the things that people used to wear when I was in the workforce, started the workforce, and also when I was in high school, seeing other people in the workforce. Things like nylons, decent looking handbags, stuff like that was considered work attire. And there was actually, like little sections in department stores that, clustered together things that you can coordinate for work. So I always thought that that was the way it was supposed to be. Now, I worked in a trailer over at Murray Family Farm, so most of the time I would just wear things like jeans, okay? I know that there was a girl who was constantly like, spying on me, competing against me, causing me problems in my workplace over there, and ended up escalating into this. But I would understand that there was perps, outside influence, encouraging her to be the way that she was. After 2013, after leaving Murray Family Farms, like I said, I had noticed that there was like this heavy targeting, and people seemed to recognize me, um, in places that I didn't necessarily go all the time. Like I might have went to one of the little shopping centers, and it might have walked into a store that I never walked into before, and people were like paying attention and like talking to me as if they knew me. I guess they were trying to extract information because a lot of people were asking me questions, and people were asking me like, was I into politics? And people were treating me and asking and kind of alluding to questions like, was I some sort of civil rights leader? Really strange stuff. And I was getting really irritated because, I had left and signed a confidentiality contract with my previous employer, stating that no details of my workplace issue would have been, disclosed, mainly because, I knew this was a sensitive issue. I knew it was a racist issue. I knew that I was getting targeted because of unfair treatment. I was getting mobbed, and I really did know. I knew it was very obvious over there at the barber's place that I was being targeted for racial issues. Anytime you bring a black woman's hair into the issue, it is, okay? And then if it was the issue trying to assume that I was doing it because I'm trying to attract male attention and insisting on that issue, that's sexual harassment, basically. So I was dealing with these issues that I feel obviously they failed to handle correctly. And so at that time, I wasn't making any videos, but I kept thinking, like I said, I have always known that all I had was myself. You know what I mean? I do believe that my family, my adoptive family, took it upon themselves to act as if they were in charge of what I did, my employment. There was some sort of agreement that I needed permission to do certain things, and this really shocked the fuck out of me because I didn't understand what was going on at the time. But now looking back, I do see that obviously I was a victim of human trafficking. Okay, no one had any right to do that. Especially, I would say, especially anybody who claims to be a family member, whether that be my blood relations or my adoptive family. Now, my adoptive family obviously was abusive to me, like especially, I would say emotionally abusive to me. And then, and they obviously did not like who I was anyway. So for them to have any sort of control over somebody should have sent off red flags because, this is one of the signs of a person being trafficked. If somebody feels as though they have some sort of control over them. But they have no court order. We never went to court. There was never any understanding that there was some sort of conservatorship over me. Like I said, if there was, I would know that because anytime I would try to make like a purchase or try to do something, I would have to go through some sort of, rigmarole or something. So I would know that I would not be authorized to handle my own affairs, right? So this whole thing was very frustrating for me. I had people in my adoptive family who knew what was going on with me. I needed explanations. I needed answers. You know what I mean? I do know that my ex-husband at the time must have been aware of what was going on. And see, this is how it infiltrates. This is why it's so dirty. This is why it's so destructive, because these sort of secrets should never be held against another person. This sort of, covert operations, infiltrate in every aspect of your life. Okay, so I was, of course, I was not able to trust my ex-husband because, when it's written in the law about marriage being one of the things that should not prevent you from seeking employment. Okay, that's a form of discrimination. Okay, when it comes to marriage, sometimes men or sometimes even women will, try to manipulate the employment of their spouse by blacklisting them, making little agreements with their friends in different, business sectors. Hey, don't open opportunities to this particular person, this sort of stuff. I know I would think going all the way back to the 70s, before employment laws started getting really fine-tuned, women were very limited. Okay, still in 2024 they still are limited, but there were times where women would get permission from their husbands to get a job. Okay, that is no longer the case. It's illegal to do that. Okay, they don't need permission from their husbands. So I was dealing with so many different work violations in this issue. I remember after leaving the farmer's place, I had mentioned I went to a seance at a metaphysical place here in town. I don't know if it's still here or not, but I was there, and I had mentioned that I was upset about a work issue, and I didn't really go into the details, but everyone in the community knew that there was some sort of blow up. Everybody in the community, see, this is why I knew something was wrong, because this issue was supposed to be confidential. Now, I understand people leak information, but there's no way in the world something like this could leak unless, of course, there was some sort of plan of harassment, some sort of, covert operation going on. And so I started realizing that there was something not quite right. But I remember saying that, I was dealing with some issues that I believe that was a racial issue at my workplace. And the lady at the seance was saying, don't make it a racial issue, make it a woman's issue. Obviously, this issue pertains to both issues, okay? They relate to both issues. It's a racial issue and it's a woman's issue, okay? From that time, was dealing with going into, different job interviews, or if I did start a new job, it was almost like people knew that who I was. There was a lot of, the coming in, the goofy smiling, the whispering and stuff like that. And I kept thinking, man, I need to follow up with Steve Murray because this is his fault. Yeah, I'm going to put the blame on the previous employer. I'm going to put the blame on the previous employer. Why? It's his responsibility to make sure that this sort of thing didn't happen. It was his company. This should have not. And if it was somebody else who leaked that information, then still it still is the employer's responsibility if they had worked that agreement out between somebody, like maybe it was one of my dad's ex-perps, or maybe it was my brother or my whatever. You know what I mean? And so everything I did in this situation was right. And I was married at the time. And I always knew that because, I made more money than my ex-husband, that I always figured by the time we got older, I was probably going to be the one who had to worry about the retirement, okay, whatever. But I, I never relied on him. I always felt as though I needed to take care of myself. You know what I mean? I always wanted to make sure my bases were covered. I always wanted to make sure because I knew. See, people, when you're dealing with gang stalking, your perps don't think about the whole picture. They already have a plan for you. The purpose of their targeting and trafficking is to move you into certain directions, put you in certain positions, okay? Positions or situations that you don't necessarily want to be in. Like, but you might move into a new town, right? They can make it so, and this is just an example, they can make it so that you only are able to live in one particular apartment complex. Why? Because this particular complex might, I don't know, be a central location of other perps that can watch you at a certain time. You don't quite understand what's going on, but this is how the operation works. There might be some sort of notification to tell the mayor of that town that this is what's going on. Then they get the participation of other companies to participate in it, and so on and so forth. Okay. So when I did my gangs talking video talking about how the pyramid works, that's how it works, okay? It's like, here's the information, this is what's going on, and we're going to inform all these people, and then it goes all the way down to the pyramid, to the, what I'm going to say the lowest base of the pyramid will be like the general public, the community, and stuff like that, where they don't get all the information, all the details, but I do believe that people, I was pointed out, psychically, I do understand that I was pointed out as a clone, okay? Um, what it is when I think maybe part of it was some people may have thought because I was a clone and this was unknown to me, a part of my perp, whether those be the people who targeted my father or my ex-adoptive family may have kept thinking, well, Maria needs to stop being so eccentric, because I know that people have always, made this comment that I'm eccentric, I'm eccentric, I'm eccentric. Um, I'm eccentric for what? I'm eccentric for a black person. I'm eccentric for a woman. I'm eccentric. I just have my own personality, okay? But that independence and that sort of singular, you know, um, personality um, does most likely derive from being a clone. But the thing is, people already knew that I was a clone. So it's like, all of that was kind of unnecessary. Like they were trying to modify, I mentioned before, they were trying to modify my behavior, what I do, things I was interested in, and trying to make me more, maybe what they consider to be normal, okay? I am normal. I'm normal based on what I am or whatever. My origins, my creation, whatever. This is who I am. There's no need for me to sit here and try to bend my standards to assimilate in a society that I don't really care about. Like I said, I can get along with people, meaning like, be polite exchanges. Like I go to the store now and, I have polite exchanges. Hi, good morning, whatever. Sometimes the conversation goes a little bit more than that. But, it's like, this is all people really need to get by in life. They don't need anything more. They really don't. Um, you know, but at the time, I had no idea that I was a clone. I had no idea. I do know that my targeting originated mainly because, like I said, my father wanted me back, and this was something that they must have raised their eyebrow at because of my origins, my racial background or whatever, being coming from a background in my previous life where I didn't necessarily like being kidnapped, didn't like necessarily having the, what is naturally in my blood being suppressed. You know what I mean? And I do believe that was the main issue, because oftentimes, like when you deal in certain arguments, you get in these sort of confrontations, especially the first thing people want to do is try to impose religion on a person who may be different. And if they feel like they could use religion as in some sort of made up fake rule, like you're somehow disobeying their whatever, their structure, their power structure. It's illegal, of course, to do that, but a lot of people forget the law, ignore the law, or whatever, but they use this as an excuse. Okay, but obviously in my past life, I probably was given excuses, relating to religion or expecting other people expecting me to bend to their whatever based on what they thought I should be. You're expecting British standards from somebody who is basically really Ethiopian, even though, like I said, you do assimilate to some degree in a certain culture. You do. I mean, like, everybody does. Here in the United States, there's a lot of mishmash, okay? There's a lot of people, from African descent that, have been in close proximity in the very beginning when during the time period of slavery, who, obviously have adapted certain things of their white masters, okay? Like, that might have been their religion, some of the people who were French who practiced Catholicism the people that they owned, the blacks that they owned, practiced, converted to Catholicism. So certain things, like whether that be religion or certain holidays, like, everybody here in the United States celebrates Christmas. The majority of people do celebrate Christmas, whether that was a religion of our racial background or not. You know what I mean? Hispanics, Asians, everybody here celebrates Christmas regardless, okay? So, I understand that part, but there's certain things that you cannot really shake out of your core. This is who you are. You know what I mean? Regardless of the clothes that you wear, or like maybe your table manners, or how you set your dinner table, or whatever, deep down inside, this were things that you're attracted to. I'm attracted to the occult. Why? Because, obviously I come from a background that is just filled with all kinds of symbolism, things that relate to, the sun. I used to wonder, I was sun gazing since I was a kid. Like, I would sit there and just like stare into the sun. And, obviously this, even though nobody ever told me to do it, probably didn't have to tell me to do it, because it's in my DNA to do it. You know what I mean? This is how deep this sort of stuff goes. So anyway, I was gonna like call this video misogyny. I was gonna call it misogyny. I do think that there was a lot of men in this is another issue that goes on in human trafficking. In human trafficking, why women resent it so much is because men will play a woman's life for sport. They will undermine uh, what women say in these issues. Looking at me about 10 years ago when I first left the farmer's place, there was a lot of transformation that went on in my life at that time, okay? And I was, wanting to leave and start over again in a different location, start my life all over again. Because, you're, at the time, I would say I was pretty, I had like firm arms. My arms were really firm. I was like toned. I would say toned. When I mean toned like that, it's like I could shake my arm and there's no like wiggle of that extra skin like hanging off the arm. Well, I guess I look pretty good, right? But, people think, well, she's taking care of herself. She's this, she's that. She must be looking for a man. So, and then you get this, you get confronted with a lot of people who are not taking your life seriously. Like, it's always been, like I said, customary. I always was raised and I was always surrounded in things that related to like professional attire. Like, this is the stuff that you wear to work. And people, I'm sitting here going into job interviews thinking that I'm looking presentable for my job interviews. And people are thinking that I'm here for, I'm trying to get a man, or there's some sort of bullshit going on. You know what I mean? This is where the sexual harassment comes in, because people need to get on with their life, and just because a woman takes care of herself doesn't mean that she's doing this because she wants to get a man. I personally have always sought balance in my life. I always knew that when I always wanted to be like ready. Like if somebody invites me to like a party, well then I'm ready. I want to feel good in the clothes because I love clothes. My life revolves around clothes because it's a part of my lifestyle. It's a part of who I am. It's a part of like my expression, and it's a part of my it's just who I am. Okay, so it's like I always wanted to be like that. I always wanted to be somebody who, just had good habits in general. Okay, and I've always made my bed. Like people would come over to my house like, "Wow, you make your bed." Because I know there's a lot of people who admit, hey, I don't make my bed. I want to be somebody who is, you know, somebody who I feel lives a balanced life, and this is what I want in my life. And a lot of women are like that. It's not, they want to make sure that their appearance is maintained. And it has nothing to do with men. It's just that they like their certain styles, they like their certain colors, they like their hair a certain way, and this is what they do. You know what I mean? And it's for them. It's not, it really has nothing to do with men. Believe it or not, it really doesn't. And so, you deal with a lot of the jokes that can get out of hand. It can get to the point of where it escalates into a sexual harassment case. This is another reason why, so in this particular situation, I feel like, obviously I deserve compensation, and this is one of the reasons why. Other people in who participated in this while I was making these videos, they didn't understand what I was talking about. They didn't understand, like, hey, there's a woman, she knows that eventually her mom is going to die. Because my mom was always, going back to my mom's house, my mom was all by herself. She had extra rooms in the house, right? It's not something that people want to do, but it's always, nice to know that you can go back if you needed to, okay? But I know that there was a time where, the height of my targeting, like in 2020, there was a period of time, or was it 2019, whatever, I had lost my job over at that hellhole in Buttonwillow, and and I needed, I didn't know what to do, so I was asking my mom, could I go back and stay? At first she said yes, I could. Then all of a sudden she completely flipped it around and said I couldn't. That was the last time I saw my mom, because we got in a little bit of an argument, because I was upset with her, trying to explain to her, Mom, I'm dealing with gang stalking. You know what I mean? And she was just like, yeah, whatever. And this whole thing has been a traumatic, like, experience for me. You know what I mean? I didn't have not seen my mother. That was the last time I saw my mom, and she died like about a year or so afterwards. And it just left so much, so much trauma in my life, because I find out I'm adopted. I find out that I was some sort of experiment, and I find out all this targeting stuff was going on, and it's a lot. It's a lot on me. You know what I mean? And this is one of the reasons why I'm making this video here at this time of the night, and why my sleeping patterns are so off. And, but I want people to understand. I want my perps to understand that, what I was saying was 100% true. You know what I mean? And I know that some people think that I think that they do. They project what they would do in my situation. You know what I mean? And I don't know if this was, I know it was religiously fueled, because obviously my stupid sister Tanya and her hypocritical husband was probably involved in. I know my ex-brother was involved, and they're the worst examples of anybody who who would emulate Christ, okay, because they completely fail at that, right? But what they do like to do is they like to covertly exercise their imagined authority. Okay, they love doing that. That's what they love. They get off on it. And so, my sister Tanya had mentioned that she was in a very, very strict type marriage, okay? And I'm not saying, not all Christians are like that. There are some Christian relationships, religion, or, I'm sorry, denominations, that, women, they don't have to feel restricted, okay? But this particular sect of Christianity, this particular form of Christianity, where my sister, could work, and she had to sit here and let her husband know what she was making, and he seemed like he was a little bit too controlling over what she did, okay? And so maybe, my sister probably was saying, oh, my sister was jealous of me anyway, okay? So she was bitching about my clothes or whatever, and, I know her husband kind of limited her freedom in those sort of things. I don't like people imposing their views on me, and I don't like people restricting me in any way. I think when it comes to why I realized I didn't want to be in a lifestyle that my sister Tanya lived is because I know how her spirit went down. Like, I remember when we would go to, Edwards Air Force Base or whatever, and my sister had just recently got married, she would express to me, how frustrated she was, like, how she felt like she wasn't getting stuff, and she was discontent. And every time I would get something, she would kind of make a comment about, being a little bit jealous, a little bit. And so when I got out on my own and had my own freedom, she might have a little bit jealous of that. And the thing is, I had my freedom because of the fact that I've always had to be independent and always felt as though I needed to be independent. You know what I mean? Um, this is just what the result of what I was not really understanding at the time is that my need for independence is a result of me dealing with all the stuff of being a clone and being in this whole nightmare situation. But anyway, going back to why I was talking about misogyny is the and making it a woman's issue is because many times we get devalued as women. People think, well, she can just go get married, she can go and do this, she can go get a man, she can do this and this and this and this and this. And when in fact, the thing is they're trying to protect themselves from getting into situations where they can be abused. It can be, like I said, it can be so easy for a powerful man to dominate a woman to the point of where she has nowhere to go. He could trap her, he can destroy her easily in these sort of situations where you have it being a group of people operating to prevent this woman from working, especially when you have like rumor campaigns going on about an individual. They have no idea how to clear their name of these accusations because they don't know what's going on. Like I would say in 2013, all the years that I have been targeted, okay, and like especially when it started becoming like very obvious that people were watching me and monitoring me, right? I had no idea why. I thought, I knew that there was some bullshit going on over at the Murray Family Farms place, okay? I conducted myself the best way I possibly could. I did everything I possibly could, even going down to the upholding the confidentiality of that contract. So I did everything right, okay? I feel as though, like, the terror of it is that when I, I literally was an open target for any kind of any sort of like hate crime at that time. And this is what people maybe not understand, or maybe they do realize it. Maybe this is the fun of making a woman's life, and making it and taking it as some sort of sport. You know what I mean? It's kind of fun seeing her, go to these different job interviews. It's kind of fun seeing her start a job and like, making sure that she loses her job. It's kind of fun to just like waste her time and think that it's an okay thing. It's not okay. Because here we are like 10 years after, a little 10 years after, a little bit more than 10 years after leaving the farmer's place, and I'm in this situation. You know what I mean? And it shouldn't be that way. This is one of the reasons why I deserve compensation. It's the compensation because of the racial issues, the discrimination of my sexual harassment. Basically, is what it is. It would be considered kind of like a sex trafficking issue. Um, you can consider it that too. Some people think, well, sex trafficking only relates to prostitution. Sex trafficking could actually go and fall under the category of somebody who's basically trying to force a person to either stay married and be married or whatever. That is also categorized, and that plays into that sort of category. So, anyway, yeah, those are the little things that are just kind of floating through my mind. I do think, my adoptive family knows how I feel. There's been when I realized what my brother was doing, trying to gain control over me. I was very angry. I had mentioned, the issue of incest that went on in the family, and also the fact that it was completely inappropriate for him to have anything to do with my life. My brother lived in Arizona. As an adult, I had very little interaction with him, and that's the way it should have been. Okay, him, or especially him and Tanya, and my sister Lisa. my ex-sister Lisa, all of these three individuals had no right to do what they did. You know what I mean? And see, here, where the mind control comes in is they think, well, we can abuse Maria however she wants to, and she will never retaliate against us because we're her family. But they're not my family. And they think that I'm going to be okay with however, what kind of mistreatment that they do to me. And this is where the mind control comes in, because it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense unless, of course, you're looking at this through the eyes of somebody who is completely dehumanizing a person, not respecting them as a person, not thinking and seeing them as a person who has needs. They would not like it if somebody did this to them. They would not like it at all if somebody affected their ability to get a job. They would not like it if somebody spread malicious rumors about them. They would not like it. They don't think of me as somebody who needs to survive. And this is another part of the sick aspect of, human trafficking. And yes, it is human trafficking because it's relating to it, and adults usually are people who, when I say adults, I'm talking about the people who claim to have rights, or yeah, somebody who's claiming rights over another human being, another adult, okay? And oftentimes this does start in the family unit. If you see somebody who's over the age of 18 and you have somebody who's insisting on monitoring them, putting them in solitude, somebody who demands that they are completely reliant on them, that's one of the signs of somebody trafficking another person, keeping them there, subjugating them in some way. Some people, like I said, mentioned before, they have like houses where they have like little, back in the 50s, they used to have like houses, and they would build like a little additional house on the side, and they used to call it like a mother-in-law suite or house or whatever. And, a lot of times people will get into these houses and they will have their target, or the person who's being trafficked, and they'll keep them in these little apartments, and monitor what they do all the time. They want to, if they want to go to the store, they sometimes insist that they follow the target there. They don't want to give this person any time alone. They want to watch this person all the time. This is one of the signs of it. I know when I was living over at one place, I mean, I literally had a security camera facing my door, no one else's door, but it was facing mine. You know what I mean? And I do think that there was a lot of participation of people, surveilling me and stuff like that at that time, especially like in the beginning. But these are it, and people think, oh, it's not that big of a deal. Like I said, anything that steps outside of what the law says is always going to be a big deal. And I know some people think, well, okay, it's okay, we're going to go ahead and break this law. And even though I basically said why you shouldn't, because they're probably thinking, oh, everybody's in on it. It's not that big of a deal. It is that big of a deal because there's after effects. There's certain sort of, it causes a certain reaction, okay, that is very traumatic for people, regardless of whether you have authorization from somebody to ignore that law at all. Anyway, like in this case, people thought that this was fun and games. Okay, it's okay. The mayor's in on it. The employers are in on it. So and so at the top of the pyramid, they told us to do it. But what happens is that, look at the psychological effects that are damaged. Okay, look at me. I am financially devastated. Okay, I'm also emotionally devastated. This is the sort of stuff that some people, they'll break down and they'll just end up committing suicide because they don't have a structure. Okay, a lot of people get really disturbed at the fact that their families could do something like this to them. Okay, so they realize, I don't have a family. They realize they don't have any friends. They realize that their work structure, their anything that they build their career on is just completely like blew up in flames. Okay, so what is the only thing a person would do? The only logical thing a person would do is commit suicide. Now, I'm not saying that that's the right thing to do, but this is what a lot of people would do because it is a very destructive thing to do. You know, human trafficking and this sort of program, these operations are a terrible thing to do. It is a form of terrorism, especially if you relate it to religion. Like if somebody was having an issue with me because they, like for example, my sister Tanya, right? My sister Tanya resents the fact that I might be wearing, I don't know, maybe I'm wearing a tank top that day, okay? It's blazing hot. This is what everybody wears, but for some reason she decides to pick on Maria for wearing that tank top, okay? Kind of like how she was picked on. So I'm wearing a tank top. And the reason why she's wearing a tank top is because the girls in her church, you know, jumped on her ass because you know, she was wearing that tank top, okay? So it's not necessarily something that Jesus has an issue with, but, you know, some petty girls are having an issue with it. And they use these things as an excuse to bully another person. I don't have to follow and adhere to your religion. Okay, that's what the law says. I don't have to. You're keeping me out of employment because you're basically trying to force your religious standards onto me. I don't need to accept your religion. That's not me saying I'm anti-God just because I'm pointing that hypocrisy out or that injustice out. It's not in any way saying, okay, well, Jesus is bad and I don't like Jesus. That had nothing to do with it. You know what I mean? There's a lot of twisted, mixed up people in the world, and the way this thing is set up, it kind of keeps people in this like constant cycle of darkness and ignorance and foolishness. You know, things that you know you should even. I mean, I'm just like surprised at how mangled her thought process was in this, or anybody's thought process was. You know, first of all, you know, like when I was thinking about like growing up in Lancaster earlier this evening, you know, while I was you know getting ready for bed, I was thinking, you know, how this was completely normal to them. Like we were living in Cloneville, okay, and there's a bunch of clones running around, and people are obviously pointing it out. Like people thought that knew that I was a clone, right? They know that I'm being abused, but they somehow justify it because in the world, this is the reality. They believed this stuff. They believed that I was a bad person. You know what I mean? Based on some sort of racial, you know, harassment that came down from the top of the pyramid or whatever. But this was the reality. They never stopped to think for 1 minute that wait a second, what? Why are there clones? Why are they even here? Like we've never heard. It's not a common knowledge thing, you know, in the outside world. Like you know, it's like they don't. It's like you know, blinded people who are just like not thinking, people who don't think for themselves. You know, it's like all this time I was dealing with a very twisted operation, and nobody even understood that because they were so manipulated and mind controlled, you know. And it ends up being that I'm right. And I knew it all along. I knew I was right all along, you know. But anyway, yeah, I do think I just wanted to come on here because I was like thinking about some things and they were just floating around in my mind. And, you know, there's a lot going on and I need to try to get myself together. And it's been really hard to do that, you know. It's been one thing after another and it's been one scary thing after another. But because you know I didn't want to end up in this situation. I didn't want to end up I didn't want to end up you know worrying about what was going to happen to me like 10 years down the road, and here we are like 10 years down the road already. And you know to me it's like it just got worse, you know. So anyway, I hope this doesn't happen to someone else again. I hope that you know people understand the devastating effects of targeting, you know, and what it's like when a woman has her life devalued. You know, somebody who doesn't understand, you know, that not every woman is looking to get married or whatever, which I think this is something that they assumed you know, a lot of times when you're dealing with sexual harassment with women, it's always like, you know, the nanny, 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 you love so and so, or you're doing this for so. You have no idea who these people are, where they are, what's going on. I had no idea that like certain people were associated with me. I had no idea until, like I said, like in January of last year. I had like I was doing this blue light bulb meditation, and I started realizing that there were some people that I never knew that were involved in this. So I, you know, so there was a lot of that. There's a lot of things that you get accused of when you are trafficked, because people, there's things going on behind the scenes that you have no idea of, you know. So anyway, I'm gonna wrap this video up. It's already been talking like for 45 minutes. 45 minutes. You know, so what I'm going to do before I go to bed, try to get back to sleep, because I'm really not tired enough to go back to bed, fall asleep. So really don't know what I'm going to do, but I'll figure something out, I'm sure. I'm going to wrap this video up. I will be back with another video sometime later. Have a good night.